If you'd like to know in advance what the Sutta topic is, sometimes I let you know through my sporadic emails, usually sent out on Thursday night. If you'd like to be on that email list, if you don't get my emails, if you don't know what I'm talking about, see me after class, I can add you, or if you're watching at home, send me your email and I'll add you to the list. I also post them on the Facebook group, so you can usually see them there. Any questions about just general meditation questions before I dive into tonight's talk? Cool. If you're like me and Dave, you read a lot of suttas. And Buddhist suttas, like many pieces of sacred literature, are a little dry. And oftentimes, not what I read that the Buddha said on the internet, with a hell of a lot of repetition. And in many ways, I think the Buddha comes across maybe as a little humorless, right? A little stern, I think it's safe to say. But there are moments of humor in his teaching, which are some of my personal favorite moments. I mean, he's no Lenny Bruce, but there are some moments where he throws down some humor, and I think that tonight's sutta, which would be the basis of our talk, is one of those that maybe is even an example of a little cruder humor of the Buddha. Some poop humor, which is appeals to every 5-year-old out there. And it's not very long, so maybe I'll just read it in case you didn't get a chance to read it in advance. And so this is apparently the Buddha is talking to a bunch of monks. I don't know the circumstances. Something that's lacking in Buddhist literature oftentimes are sort of the date, time, place. Why was he talking? Sometimes we get a little bit of that in the Vinaya and the rules. Like somebody didn't put down the toilet seat, so then the Buddha's got to make a rule, put down the toilet seat when you're done. You get a little background of that. This one I don't get a lot of backgrounds, except that I'm going to assume that there was a monk who may have been showing a little pride, right, in their monkhood. So this is what he says. The Buddha of the Suttas says, monks, and I might edit this a little bit for dramatic effect. Monks, gains, offerings, and fame are a cruel thing, a harsh, bitter obstacle to the attainment of unexcelled rest from bondage. See, that's not funny. I mean, it starts off, you're just like, this is a traditional Buddha sutta, right? Gains, offering, and fame are a cruel thing. Like, how anti-American is that right there? Right? All right, you're like, here we go, it's the fucking Buddha again. But then he switches gears. He says, suppose there were a beetle, a dung-eater, full of dung, gorged with dung, with a huge pile of dung in front of him. He, because of that, would look down on the other beetles and says, and this is actually what Tanisaru Bhikkhu translates this as. He goes, yes, sirree. Yes, sirree. I am a dung eater, full of dung, gorged with dung. with a huge pile of dung in front of me. My dung kingdom. And the monk's got to be thinking, where is he going with this? Like, what's the Buddha been smoking tonight? Like, the rains retreat's been really long. We've been cooped up for a while. He says, in the same way, there is a case where a certain monk, teacher, practitioner, layperson, he says monk, but it's because he's talking to a bunch of monks, right? So just insert your name here. Okay. There is the case where a certain person, conquered by gains, offerings, and fame, their mind consumed, adjusts their robes, and taking their bowl and outer robes, goes into a village or town for alms, right? For collecting offerings. It's not a word you hear very often anymore, alms. Right? I don't remember the last time that I wasn't teaching Buddhism that I used the word alms in a sentence. Having eaten there as much as he likes, right? Just like everyone's like, oh, the monk is here, come in. Here's some rice, here's some vegetables, an egg roll, a knish. Do they have knish? I don't think so. Having eaten as much as he likes, full of alms foods, and invited again for the next day, come back. We loved having you here. Your Dharma, just so good. Come back. He goes back to the monastery, and in the midst of a group of monks, right? So there's all these other monks sitting around, maybe didn't get as much food on their alms rounds, right? Maybe they weren't invited back. And he goes back to the monastery in the midst of a group of monk, boasts, I have eaten as much as I like. I am full of alms food. That does not sound as delicious as a burrito, but I guess, okay. Alms food. And I have been invited again for tomorrow. I am the recipient of robes. Check out my robes. Alms foods, lodgings, and medicinal requisites for curing illnesses, right? So these are the only things that monks are allowed to own, right? And you're completely dependent upon your community to provide you with those things. Like if you don't get alms food, then you're just hungry. Right? If you don't get new robes, then you got ratty robes. Right? If you don't have medicinal requisites for curing illnesses, you're just sick. Right? So it's not a lot, but it's what the monks got. They're like, check out my pile of dung. These other monks, though, this is monk talking. These other monks, I have all this nice stuff, but these other monks, they have next to no merit and no influence. They aren't the recipient of robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicinal requisites for curing illnesses. Conquered by gains, offerings, and fame, his mind consumed, he looks down on the other well-behaved monks. That will be for this worthless man's long-term suffering and harm. That's how cruel gains, offerings, and fames are, a harsh, bitter obstacle to the attainment of the unexcelled rest from bondage. So you should train yourselves. We will put aside any gains, offerings, and fame that have arisen. We will not let any gains, offerings, and fame that have arisen keep our minds consumed. That's how you should train yourselves. So that's the Sutta of the Dung Beetle. I chuckled a little bit when I read this. I saw myself a little bit in this sutta. Right? I get a little bit of spiritual gain, right? Hey, look at me. I'm teaching the Dharma. Right? I get sort of my spiritual collection, and I go, look how spiritual I am. Oh, you haven't been on retreat yet? Oh, you must go. Right? Have you seen these fine Dharma books? Look at my fine Dharma books. Oh, you don't have any Dharma books? You must get some Dharma books. Right. Oh, this statue of the Buddha? I got it in Thailand. You haven't been to Thailand? You must go. It was so spiritual. And how easy is it to get caught in that, right? This look at how spiritual I am, and to walk in and go, oh, yes, look at me with my fine organic cotton Buddhist shawl, all white, showing my piety to the Buddha. Right? Oftentimes, when I am scared that my practice isn't going anywhere, I tend to just sort of fall back. And I go, but I have all this stuff, right? Look at my pile of dung. I look down on you from my pile of dung. The Buddha uses humor for very specific purposes. When he uses humor in the suttas, he's asking me to have some discernment around my situation. He's helping for me to see clearly so that I can work with myself. Right? It's sharp, but it gives me some perspective. It allows me to take a step back and kind of go, oh yeah, that's me, I do that, right? I mean, this is the wonderful thing about humor, is it allows me to take a little step back from the seriousness of being me and to go, oh yeah, I totally do that. That's so silly. Why do I do that? And this is part of discernment, is giving myself some perspective on myself so that I can work with myself. The other reason that humor is used is, here's the thing. Suffering, dukkha, it's delicious, right? I am the dung beetle, right? I've just got my pile of shit, but I love being the king of the dung beetles, right? Sometimes this path can seem somewhat maybe unappealing, right? Doing the skillful things, right? Isn't it just much easier to go, but I'm human, right? Who doesn't steal things now and then, right? And yeah, my meditation practice is so hard, right? I would just rather play video games. Right? Who doesn't need to just check out every once in a while? Right? So it's also providing me this discernment with some motivation to do things, to take my vitamins that maybe seem a little unappealing and a little dull, right? And actually gives me a little bit of motivation. It's like, oh yeah, what am I doing? Just piling up this collection of what essentially amounts to dirt or dung. Right? What am I? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This is not what I want to do. Discernment gets me on the path and keeps me there. It's what provides me with the stamina and the persistence, the effort that is necessary for this path. Right? It allows me to laugh at myself a little bit. I hope that in this story you see a little bit of the dung beetle in you. And I hope that you see like, oh yeah, I've totally done that. Oh yeah, I've totally been that guy. To give me that right perspective on my practice. You know, humor is in many ways the sacrifice of the self to overcome our own egos, our own arrogance, right? To bring us down to a discerning view. Right? The best comics are the ones that talk about their own experience, but in whom we can see ourselves. And that's why it's funny. Because they go, oh damn, I'm totally, the sheets are pulled, I am naked, but thank God I'm not on stage. There's a practice that I've been working with this year that I like. I like practices that I can kind of take with me as I'm going out the door, practices that I can use throughout my day, something that brings me back into my practice when I'm off the cushion. And these are, they're a Tibetan practice. I know, heresy, right? And the practice has a beautiful traditional Tibetan name, you know, the root text of the 7 points of the training of the mind, right? So Tibetan. Right? Probably sounds even better in Tibetan. This practice, I was introduced to this, my wife at Christmas, I celebrate Christmas, what? And it's presents. I like presents, they're nice. Look at my pile of dung. She got me these cards from Pema Chodron with these slogans. Because essentially this is a slogan practice that has these different slogans about practice. And the idea with these is you pull a card for the day, and you read it, and there's a slogan on the front and interpretation on the back, and then you go about your day trying to kind of incorporate that into your day, and then you come back at the end of the day and you look at the card like, how did I do? Right? Usually it's, oh, not very well. Right? So I'll pick a new card tomorrow. Right? It's practice. And actually, it comes from, I think most of us were introduced, if at all, from this book, Chogyam Trungpa's Training the Mind and Cultivating Loving Kindness, where he talks about these slogans, which I liked because I was actually gifted this book after I got these slogan cards, and it's cool because it gives even further explanation from Pema Chodron's teacher. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So there's a section on these slogans on developing prajna paramita, right, which is wisdom, right? And wisdom is a bit sharp, right? They call it the sort of sword of discernment, right? It's kind of like humor, right? Humor just cuts to the core, right? That's why I like humorous teachings, because they go right to the heart of the matter in a way that I can hear, right? And so this, of course, the wisdom practice is to let go of attainment, right? To let go of this idea of adornment of the ego, right? Piling up my little ball of dung, right? Dung beetles, by the way, super amazing animals. right? They have them at the San Diego Zoo. If you're ever down there, you can go look at the Dung Beetle collection. And I put a picture of one up on the page. Really amazing. So no disrespect to the Dung Beetle. So there's a couple slogans in there that really have, well, quite frankly, they just keep popping up. And every time I see them, I go, ooh, that cuts a little bit to the quick. That's usually how I know that's where my practice needs to go, is when I read something and I go, ooh. Right. The first one is don't try to be the fastest. It's the first slogan. Slogan number 35 if you're playing at home. Pull out my copy of Trungpa. Look at my copy of Trungpa. Oh, you haven't read Trungpa? Must read Trungpa. I literally do have a Dharma shelf in my house. It's like my Buddha statues. Right? Don't try to be the fastest. Such an important practice for me, right? Look at me with my Dharma attainments and how quickly I just started studying Dharma and I've already done a 3-month retreat at IMS, right? And I'm signed up for the next thing and the next thing. Instead of just being where I am, instead of actually practicing, it's like, yeah, so like I'm really super angry and I don't know why, right? And it's affecting my relationships. And I'm really unhappy with that. Like, how often do you hear people actually say stuff like that? Like, I'm so busy, like, oh, I'm so spiritual, right? I'm donating half of my paycheck to Greenpeace this month, right? That's good. Do that. But and then the reality is I'm just walking around just seething, or fearful. So rather than trying to be the fastest, like the most Buddhist, the most this, the most that, right? Can I actually practice where I am? Right? Look at the other dung beetle and be like, yeah, that's a nice ball of dung. I'm just working on mine over here. Because so often I confuse the path with the practice. I go, oh, look, I'm a Buddhist. I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm an other thing. I'm a 5th level, hooty hoo in the what's it tradition, and I've been honored by, their holiness, the Dung Beetle of San Diego, right? That's my new Dharma name, the Dung Beetle of San Diego. Somebody can translate that into in Sanskrit. I will put it on a business card. And instead, can I actually just practice? Can I just practice where I am? And this next one, slogan number 36, it says, don't act with a twist. Oftentimes it's easy to get caught up in practice so people can go, oh, that's so cool, you meditate. And you're like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Right? Look at me, I got my Buddhist shirt on. I don't know what a Buddhist shirt is, but I remember walking down Melrose, the old Seattle Dharma punks. I had a friend who was up there, and she sent me a Seattle Dharma punk shirt and had a picture of the Buddha, and I'm walking down Melrose Avenue, a street here in Los Angeles, kind of hip shops, and I'm wearing my, Buddhist t-shirt that my friend gave me, and somebody stops me and goes, oh my God, are you a Buddhist? and I was like, Yes, I am. I am a Buddhist. And he goes, oh my God, do you have any meditative attainments? And I was like, I don't have any meditative attainments. I don't have those. Am I supposed to have those? I should get some of those, right? And I said, and I was like, no, I don't have any attainments. I just meditate. He goes, ah. He was like bummed, right? He was like, ah. And I've been on my way. Right, so don't practice with this goal of actually getting somewhere. Right? Don't confuse the practice with path. Can I just practice? Not to get anything, not to get followers, not to be super spiritual, maybe not even to be peaceful. But can I instead just practice? And everybody wants to be the universal Buddha, right? It's got a good rap. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be the universal Buddha. Like I'm going to be the guy, the gal, right? It's the Jesus syndrome. If you're honest, go back if you feel like it and read the electric Kool-Aid acid test, right? And there's this moment in the electric Kool-Aid acid test. It's the sort of this author following around the Grateful Dead in the early days, right? And the people on the bus, right? And this one guy is like he's at this show, right? And it's this early Dead show. They didn't call them Dead shows back then. It was just this happening, right? And this guy goes, I'm Jesus. And he gets on stage and he goes, I'm Jesus. And someone goes, this guy who's Jesus, can everybody else who's Jesus get on stage? And like everybody rushes the stage. They're like, yes, I'm Jesus too, right? That first guy's super bummed. He's like, man, I thought I was Jesus. And if I'm honest, I mean, there's that time like I'm going to be the special one, right? I'm going to be the person that saves this other person. That's going to enlighten them. Right? If I'm honest, that's why we use humor, because it's hard to be honest sometimes. But there's these other kinds of Buddhas. There's more than one kind of, there's like the universal Buddha. He gets all the press. Right? I think that's why everybody wants to be the universal Buddha, because he's like, he gets like statues in like Costco now, right? I mean, he's pretty big. And, but there's these other Buddhas, right? These other Buddhas. First of all, there's like all the people who become Buddhas from hanging out with and studying the Dharma of the universal Buddha. Like, you don't have to reinvent this stuff. Like every so often somebody writes a Dharma book, like, hey, check it out, it's a new Dharma book. I'm like, it's the same Dharma. All right, that's the same stuff that the Buddha said like 2,500 years ago. Right? It's the same. There's nothing new, right? It's just the Dharma, right? Which is awesome. Like a lot of times people would get enlightened off of like one of the Buddha's homies, right? They didn't even like go see the Buddha. They're like, if they saw the Buddha on their own, they're like, I don't even know that guy, right? They're like, I'm with this other guy, right? So I don't have to reinvent the Dharma. It's not like I have to rediscover. Like I don't have to. I remember when I first started. This is so embarrassing. This is a true story. It's a true story. When I first started meditating, the first time I was like ever like, I should meditate. I was like newly sober and really suffering, and lonely, and just like twitchy. And I was like, I remember reading Siddhartha, Hermann Hesse's book, which isn't even about the Buddha, right? First of all, like, I was so disappointed when I read the life story of the Buddha, and I was like, hey, Hermann Hesse lied to me, right? And so disappointing. So I'm sitting in my apartment, right, in Koreatown, and I'm like, the Buddha had the Bodhi tree. I have my Koreatown apartment. I will sit in this spot and I shall not be moved until I am enlightened. I think I lasted 2 minutes before I was like, no, I'm just going to play GTA some more. Infinitely better. Grand Theft Auto, for those of you who aren't gamers. It's a terribly violent video game. Right? Like, I don't have to reinvent the Dharma. There's also another kind of Buddha. This is the Pakseka Buddha. And these are the unknown Buddhas. These are the Buddhas that maybe do find their own way to Dharma, but you've never heard of them. Right? They're just quietly being Buddhas in the world, hanging out. I don't know how many Buddhas can dance on the head of a pin. I don't think Buddhas dance, so probably 0. But again, I love this idea that like maybe there's like thousands of Buddhas just like chilling out in the world. They're just quietly going about their days, working in an office, gardening. I don't know what Buddhists do. I think they do the laundry, right? Isn't that what you do? Yeah, after awakening, you do this. So they're doing laundry, right? Everyone's got to do laundry. Maybe not going around going, hey, look at me, I'm a Buddha. What's up? So this, for me, when I read this sutta, it's like, remember to be a little humble in my practice. Maybe remember that the goal of practice is not to write yet another Dharma book. Or, that's awesome. There's some great Dharma books out there. I've had some friends write some amazing Dharma books. But, it doesn't mean that my practice isn't exactly where it's supposed to be. Just because, Oprah's not banging down my door. Right? I was just sitting in a park in Germany one day and then I was enlightened. Now I'm on Oprah, right? That's awesome, dude. But that can ruin my practice, right? Because I'm immediately in a comparing mind. I'm immediately like, well, clearly my practice sucks. And I might as well just give up. And discernment is what brings me back to the path. Discernment is seeing clearly in a way that actually brings me back and allows me to look at myself, with some perspective and motivates me to take my vitamins. Right? It's not super sexy, right? Probably doesn't sell a lot of deodorant, which the dung beetle probably needs. But, I think it's important to be humble, to be what I am, where I am. Another sutta in the same group of suttas talks about, it's like when my practice is not authentic, it's like I'm a donkey trying to be a cow. It's like there's a group of cows walking along, being cows, and then there's like a donkey behind and go, look at me, I'm a cow. And it's like, you're not a cow, bro, you're a donkey. No, I'm really when I walk around going, look at me, how spiritual I am. I'm a Buddhist. Right? Maybe it's okay to be a donkey. Right? That's my practice. That's what I want to work with. Don't try to be the fastest. Don't get it twisted. Otherwise, I might find myself called out as, the king of the Dung Beetle hill. My kingdom of dung. Can I learn? The question for me, and I'm much more interested in the question than the answer. The question for me is, can I gladden my mind? It's something I never would have said before I started practicing. Can I gladden my mind exactly as it is? Can I delight in learning to let go of those things that are no longer serving me and to develop that which I kind of go, ooh, I don't want to do that so much. Can I actually find some delight in that? That's the discernment, is what gladdens my mind. This is really a teaching about discernment. How do I learn to see what it is that I'm missing? In my own practice, where I am in this moment as I am. Or am I doing a great big song and dance on top of a pile of dung? Any questions, comments about this sutta on discernment, the Dung Beetle Sutta?
I was just going to say that I've always found it, and I shouldn't say always because it doesn't happen that often, but really supportive when a Dharma teacher talks about their own struggles, or maybe not struggles, but the shit that comes up for them, and the real deal, and I can not see myself in that, but it reassured me like, oh, it's not, it's not like a mountaintop that these achieved people are sitting on. I'm still just climbing to get there.
Right.
So I really appreciate that. This talk tonight's been great. And the other thing I was going to say, I think you touched on this in your email, but there's I sympathize with Dharma teachers in a way, because I know for myself, and I feel like for maybe a lot of people, as we receive the Dharma from whoever's teaching, it's as if it was theirs and they're sharing it with us.
Right.
And you touched on that about how it's the Dharma. this is the Buddha.
And your experience is actually your own awakening.
Right. Which makes it all the more like, oh my God, this, like, wow, this is amazing, especially if like they wrote a book and then you go listen to them. So I think I mentioned that because I imagine that must be very difficult for a person who sits in the Dharma seat and then receives that, to hold that lightly, like, I'm not, you know what I mean? Because it's seductive as hell. Like,
sure.
Right, hold this adulation, sorry.
Yeah, this monk in this sutta, right? He's like, look at my fabulous robes, look at all my supporters, right? I must be the shit that I think I am.
Yeah, it's got to be hard. I mean, we're human. It's got to be hard to, like...
It feels good.
Yeah, right. There you go.
Because especially when the other dung beetles are like, damn, that is a good dung ball. That's amazing. Right? I can only aspire to have a dung ball quite that large. It is. You start to believe that, right? So for me, I think I'm much more interested in, like, can we as practitioners invite each other into the teaching seat, to see each other as as also a Tibetan practice as fully enlightened Buddhas, and to really see the wisdom that we all contain, right? The coming Buddha not as an ego trip, but as something that we're doing together, that we're constructing this meaning through practice, and being in the midst of the reality of our lives, which is really what Dharma is asking me to look at, is the reality of my life as it is, not some phony, spiritual stuff, which is, I think, a little bit, Trungpa definitely went off the rails in a lot of regards, but why he stepped down off of being a Rinpoche, and instead, got married and had a family and was trying to live a life, later on, just getting people to wipe his butt, but nobody's perfect, I guess. Even if we know this lesson, it's easy to get seduced by it, right? I mean, it's really, of the nature, and so I think that it's good to make fun of our teachers a little bit, even though you're not supposed to in the Buddhist tradition, right? You're not supposed to, like one of the monks in the Buddhist time makes a joke about the Sangha. He had been formerly an actor, so he probably said something witty on the alms round about the Sangha, right? And the Buddha's like, yeah, you can't do that. Matter of fact, don't make any jokes about the Sangha or the Buddha either. Like, must have been a really good joke. Right? The Buddha's like, no, man.
It was close to home.
Yeah. But I do think that, to me, that is also more invitational. And I think this is a unique style to maybe Western Buddhism that I found to be very helpful to prevent some of this projection. Is to go, I'm just like, one day I was in my apartment in Koreatown suffering a lot, and I was like, maybe meditation would help, and I sucked at it, quite frankly. Right? And then maybe instead somebody goes, oh yeah, I've also had that, so that actually means practice more, not play GTA, right? So, yeah, thank you.
No, that's great. I appreciate it.
Humor might be more necessary in our culture, since we are so capitalistic and we're so materialistic. We might need that, like, to counterbalance that, as opposed to different cultures that aren't quite as materialistic as us. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I think humor is, I believe it's fairly universal. I mean, you've got the Buddha cracking jokes, poop jokes no less. But I think that there's a seriousness that I think that also this sutta speaks a little bit to acquisition and to becoming, which is such a capitalistic approach. And because that is our culture and the lens that we see, I mean, we even see contemplative practice as acquisition, right?
right.
My friend Jean Lushtek, the Dharma teacher up in San Francisco, and one of the early Dharma teachers that I sat with, he talks about, he took ordination in Thailand, I believe, somewhere in Southeast Asia, if not Thailand. And the story, it was told to me, was that Jean, he gets ordained and he puts on his robes and he's, looking at himself, the shaved head and the robes for the first time, and his first thought is, chicks are really going to dig this. And there are a lot of foibles, that the Buddha's always throwing water on, in the suttas, monks and nuns and lay people, struggling with real life stuff. In the story, it's like the attainment of being a monk is also not, in and of itself, saving me, right? It's also, I need to put that aside, right, and not let that consume me, right? That's not the point, right? It's like, okay, awesome. Like if you get any spiritual powers, if you do get any, Melrose Avenue spiritual powers, you're not supposed to show them off, right? Like there's actually a rule that if you get psychic powers from your Buddhist practice, I read it now and I go, wait, that stone guy on Melrose knew what he was talking about, right? Wait, you're not allowed to show anybody, right? Because then people have a false sense of discernment, right? Then they're like, oh, I'm going to meditate so I can fly, right? Apparently you can fly if you practice hard enough, right?
I like what you said about our stuff, our pile of stuff just being dirt. Because then I had this little image of, everything that we have really is just going to turn into dirt.
Literally.
Things I have are just going to turn into
literally.
dirt. And I was like, I bet I could get rid of some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just a nice little beautiful metaphor for what's really important in my practice. My practice of being a human being. Yeah, because it literally is ashes to ashes, dust to dust. My kingdom of dirt. 9 Inch Nails quote to end our talk tonight. I really want to thank everybody for being here tonight and for laughing with me and maybe not quite taking our practice so seriously. That should be a slogan, right? It's definitely a slogan in it's called Rule 62. Don't take life so fucking seriously.
For those of us that were here for existential dread last week, this was a really
It's a nice, yeah.
This is a nice contrast.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
It was a great talk, but this is
and it's in the same topic. We've been talking this month about how do we deal with things falling apart around us, and but even when we're doing that, we don't have to be quite so serious about it. And in fact, I would say if we're going to survive, we need a healthy dose of prajna paramita. All of our donations for this month, 40% of our donations rather, will go to Extinction Rebellion, which is a group seeking to say, yo, enough, we got to do something about this whole global warming thing, like for reals. And I put a link up on the page. There's some folks who did a protest out at Universal Studios, and they had, even though they were, the charges were dropped, they still had to raise bail, and they need some money. So we'll be giving some money to Extinction Rebellion to help them with that. And there's also a climate march September 27th in downtown Los Angeles. And I plan on being there, and I invite you all as part of your practice to also show up and bear witness for that. 30% of our donations go to this beautiful place, the Pacific Community Acupuncture. It's an amazing nonprofit that provides really incredible treatments to the community at an incredibly affordable price, like $20 to $40 sliding scale, no joke. So they offer us this space as sort of their umbrella of nonprofit, and in return I like to offer part of our dana to this space, which goes back to then helping the community. And then the remaining 30% gets split up between myself and Craig and anybody else who teaches. So that's kind of where the dana goes. There's a jar over there, and I usually put up a link if you'd like to make a donation of any kind. Dana talk always feels weird, right? It feels weird. That's why I really like, I'm trying to flip the whole Dana on its head and be like, no, it's like really like you're actually giving back to the community. The last one I'll mention from this collection of humorous stories is, there's a bunch of monks that it's not enough to just have like a little simple meditation hut. Like they want to have like a beautiful meditation hall, with like teak floors, right? And like a golden Buddha statue. Like they really want like a nice place. So they're always hitting up the community for donations, right? They're like, oh, could you just come help, build, could you give us some, donate, they're always like, and after a while, the villagers are just like they see the monks coming. They're like, oh yeah, I gotta go over here, right? Nobody's home, right? To the point where if they even see like a cow, they think it's a monk and they run away. They start running away from the cows, right? But it's like, nobody likes that. Nobody likes that feeling, right? Allow people to give if that feels right to them. Allow your practice to invite that. And so I hope that with what we're doing, we're inviting the generosity through what I'm trying to do with this group is just to really make us a group of practitioners that like are a part of our community and that are making a feeble attempt to practice in our lives. Right, as it is where we are. So let's dedicate the merit of tonight before we go out. May any clear seeing that has arisen from our practice and discussion tonight be offered freely outward to all beings. May all of us learn to see the truth with a little bit of humor. May all of us learn to practice in our lives exactly as they are. May all beings find ease. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for tuning in at home.